Hi, my name is Charles Vance. I'm along with Chief Strategist Terry Sacka. We're going to be talking today about financial preservation and global economics. You're watching The Wealth Transfer. Terry, it is good to see you today.
Charles.
Glad that you're along.
Hello, hello. How are you today?
Always good.
Good.
You're one of my favorite humans.
Well, I hope your wife doesn't hear that one.
No, she's my favorite.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
You're
just
not.
one
You're
of
not
them.
you're one of the favorite. I don't have a whole lot of favorites.
Well, I can understand. It's a strange world.
We're going to be talking today about inflation.
Inflation and the real kind of angle to inflation.
Yeah, there's a lot of misinformation out.
Yes.
Concerning inflation. We want to see what causes it, where it's coming from, why it's there, what it's going to do to us, what kind of impact it's going to have on our finances.
And I think there's some angles to what is actually going to bring upon inflation, and it's going to, this is a new series that we're embarking upon. We were just finished up a petrodollar series, and if you hadn't seen that show, please go to the archive on the Wealth Transfer page on Cornerstone Asset Metals. The website should be there on the screen. And go see that petrodollar series. It's about 4 or 5 shows, and it will really give you an insight as to the dollar's dominance and how crude oil is shaping that. Because what we're going to get into with the inflation, I think you're going to find this new series is going to be an eye-opener as we get into the 4th or 5th segment of the series, and you'll start to see how it evolves. And inflation isn't just my milk or my bread is a few cents higher. There's a bigger dynamic, and it's going to shock a lot of you.
See if we can, I don't want to throw you a curveball, but I want to ask you a question. Okay. What really is inflation?
Well, inflation technically is that inflation is where we start to have too few dollars chasing too many goods. And so, you know, what we need to do is understand that it's about money chasing goods, goods chasing money, and too much money gets involved. It's actually too much money. I'm kind of going the other way around.
So it's too much money
chasing too few goods.
Okay.
Okay.
So kind of like there's more money than there is product.
Yes. Okay. And so what happens is money starts, or currency starts to circulate in economies too fast. And what happens is it starts chasing after the goods, and so then the goods start going up in price. But it really, the correlation, the bottom line of inflation, as they print currency, prices rise. Because remember, every single dollar they print causes prices of goods and services to go up. It's just the nature of the flow of the economies and scales of money.
So when we're talking about printing money, first of all, people need to understand that we're talking about not the government printing money, although the government is contracted to physically print the money.
Yes.
But the government doesn't own the money. The Federal Reserve banking system, which is independent wealthy people, own the banks, not the government. And I really think that's been a deception for years.
It's been a deception.
People put Federal Reserve note on the currency. They call the people the feds. So they're making those folk, they want people to believe that it's the federal government. They actually put the secretary of the government's name, signature.
Right.
The secretary of the treasurer, they put his signature on there. So they want everyone to believe that this currency is actually coming from the government, but it's actually not coming from the government.
No, and when you look at the top of your dollar bill notes, it says a Federal Reserve note. Now remember, back in the day, it was a silver certificate or a gold certificate. Now this by nature was what money was, because money, the real definition is storage of value over time. Currency, by printing it, is by nature devaluing or debasing its value. So over time, it slowly goes down to the point where after, now we're in our mid-40s, 40-some years of this monetary system of the fiat currency note.
Wait, what do you mean by fiat?
Fiat is fake. Meaning it's not backed up by anything, it's just floating.
That term is actually used in the banking industry.
Oh, sure, yes.
It's called fiat currency.
Fiat currency.
Or fiat money, fake money.
Yes, that's right.
Now, when the bank begins to print more money, some people think that all they do is print money to replace old worn money, but they actually print more money, generally because the government needs money and they created out of thin air. And I know to people that don't know anything about this system, they don't think that's possible because we can't do that. I mean, it'd be like us writing bad checks and just passing them to everyone.
Well, matter of fact, the whole economic system is air. It's digits in the cosmos, as a client said once, I thought was really humorous, because it actually is fake. The banking system is designed to do what they call fractional banking, meaning I have $1 billion in the bank in real currency, but I loan out $25 billion in loans on paper. Now that's what digits in the cosmos. They just made it up. It's not real money backing it up. So why this is important and why inflation is important, you're going to see as we get into this that inflation actually was a really unique tool to deceive and loot the individual from true wealth, true money. It was done over time, a little bit at a time, incrementally, so it was supposed to perceive to be normal. But the fact is, if you had $100,000 50 years ago, you'd be pretty rich, right?
50 years ago, you would have been.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes.
And $100,000 today doesn't quite seem like a lot. Now, it is, don't get me wrong, but it isn't compared to 50 years ago.
Absolutely not.
That has become because inflation has been incrementally looting the value of what you hold. Now remember, it's not just you, it's your family, how you handed it down.
We need people to understand there was only one of these.
Yes.
But there was one of these in the bank backing it.
Yes.
They decided they needed more. There was still just one in the bank backing it, and they printed another one.
There you go. Now, think about it. It's a pie, and you owned almost the whole pie, and then just one day your neighbor comes over and says, I want half your pie. So wait a minute. I worked for a year to get that pie. Well, I want half of it right now. Now, there's a big inflation on you because all of a sudden you have lost half of what you worked for. In value, in buying power, purchasing power. And we all know what this means, of course, right? And now we're kind of being simple here at the moment with inflation, but we need to get down to the root to understand. We all know bread used to be 75 cents, $1.20 for that matter. Now it's $3. Gasoline used to be 20 cents, $3. On and on and on. College costs, you name it, housing. A great Mustang you could buy for $7,500 brand new. Now it's $35,000. And it's not because the engine's stronger, right? So we need to kind of understand that inflation was always designed to make it seem as you're making more money, therefore these things and these prices seem normal. But the fact is, over time, true wealth, real asset, has been eroded. If you look back in the day in Europe especially.
When you say that, I want people to understand this. When you say that, you mean that the currency that they hold is being eroded.
Yes.
Because if you're holding something tangible, and what I mean by something tangible, and we call it earth assets, things that God made. If you're holding land, buildings, something that you can physically, silver, gold, something, food, gasoline, something you can get your hands on. I was talking with my wife the other day. I said it's very interesting that silver has gone down according to the stock market prices. It's gone down, but gasoline has gone down along with it. You can still buy the same amount of gasoline that you could with the same amount of silver 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 50 years ago.
Yes.
So there's an equal exchange of value when it comes to tangible compared to tangible.
Yes.
What happens is they're making, the banking system is making us think this is just as tangible as something that is really tangible when this is fiat.
That's correct. That's right.
And what this is doing, they're printing more and more of this, but they don't have any more tangible goods to back it up. So we just keep getting more and more. So it takes more and more of these to buy the same loaf of bread, the same gallon of gas that you used to be able to buy with this, or you could still buy with this, actually.
The same. And that is a very, very clear and excellent interpretation of inflation. real assets. Now, why is this important? Because our retirements, 401ks, IRAs, currency that we hold in the bank is all tied to this equation that Charles said. So we're holding on to, and remember, the body of Christ should have always been in earth assets because God gave us dominion over the earth. So what we're trying to say is inflation, if we were in the dominion of the earth realm that God gave us, authority over, we would have been equally wealthy as we were 50 years ago, and then some for that matter. And it's important because your IRAs, your retirement accounts, a lot of people storing currency in the bank. If you only knew the banking rules, if you don't know the new banking rules, you should go to our archive site and look up banking rules, because I think you're going to be surprised. You're an unsecured creditor and that you're not getting that money back if the bank collapses like you think. But beyond that, inflation is real on your storage of value. So before we get going further into this, for those that have those type of assets to protect, it is vital that you become educated, that you get information. Give us a call, register on a website. We will send out this package loaded with data on the challenges to the dollar in the very near future, and I mean very near, the challenges to the global economics and why Europe is struggling so heavily, and the East and West challenges of the BRIC nations, and how simply and easily it is to roll over your IRAs and retirement accounts into a precious metals IRA where you store hard tangible assets. Now, the reason we say this is because it's the most liquid. You can buy it, you can sell it very quickly and easily. And it's important to understand. If you're going to be in anything, I know I've had people have had this question, they're really gigged on confiscation and they go into this thing. Just understand. There's 19 trillion in the retirement system. There's some 10 trillion, 9 trillion in currencies. There's barely $1 trillion, not even, in private hands in the United States. This is really not the place they're going to go for money and confiscation if they have to. It's just going to be way too difficult. But the bigger question is, what else are you going to do in your IRAs and 401ks long term? If the dollar challenges we think are presenting itself are going to come and play out, you need to be diversified and properly protected in these earth elements, because if it happens the way it looks like it's happening, as we're going to show you, you're going to lose tremendous buying power and retirement capability and standard of living if you're not prepared.
Terry, I want us to continue talking about inflation. I want us to dig into this a little deeper, but I want also people to understand the reason the value of their property costs more dollars now is because inflation has gone rampant in the last, since they took the gold and silver standard.
Yep, since the 70s, really.
Since the 70s. So we see property values, as far as appraisal values, are compared to the printed dollar. They're not compared to silver dollars or gold coins.
That's right.
So that's why that it takes so many more of these to purchase the same piece of property. You could take these and pretty much equal out the same thing that you spent these for to buy a piece of property back in the 70s, and you could probably spend the same or real close to the same exchange value, because again, you're using something tangible to exchange for something tangible. We would probably call it bartering in the real world, that we would exchange something tangible for something tangible. Rather, what we've been doing is letting the banks print this and print it and print it and print it, and it keeps going down in value, which makes it look like everything tangible is raising in value.
Yes, and it's one thing to say is with that, we think this has value. And so look at it this way on that house scenario. A house right now, let's say it's going to cost you $200,000. A house right now would cost you about, let's say 10,000 ounces of silver. But when silver reaches $100, because this is going to lose a lot more value in the future when you see the data we're going to present, you will be able to buy that same house in the future for probably 2,000 ounces now instead of the 10,000 ounces. So you'll see that your actual buying power gets greater in a hard tangible asset than it will if you store long-term retirement and savings and currencies in this. And that equation is basically this. Why pay off certain something or do something with a more expensive paper dollar when in the future you could pay it off a lot cheaper dollars? Because this will be far more valuable, and so you'll pay off those debts, housing or whatever certain types of strategies you'll have in a cheaper dollar, and then invest accordingly into the tangible asset during this cycle we're seeing.
What is there a possibility that inflation can stop?
No.
Why do you think it
Because
can't stop?
we are what we know as a deficit spending nation. It goes to the Greeks,
explain
it goes
that.
to the Romans. Basically, we need to print more money in order to pay the interest on our debt because we have more debt than we have money.
Our debt.
The nation's
The
debt.
nation's debt. Okay.
So we have to continue to see inflation in order to keep the system moving. If we go into deflation, which everyone is talking about right now, and I understand.
What would cause deflation? Them
Deflation,
pulling money back out of the system?
deflation is when people sit on money, currency. They don't spend it. They're waiting for prices to come down further before they buy something. This is incredibly dangerous, and the Federal Reserve has made it very clear that they will print and drop money, quote, from a helicopter to keep us from being in deflation. Because if that happens, the economic engine completely halts. And it's happening right now because individuals, corporations are holding on to currency and not spending it. And all the numbers you're seeing are not exactly truthful. So be cautious of that.
This fake fiat money system or currency system, it can only operate if people use the currency.
That's right.
Or else it starts messing up things.
That's correct. And so they must have inflation incrementally over time versus a deflation. Because if they start losing value, the whole system collapses. So what they've designed, our whole way of economics, has been to incrementally keep inflation moving up. And supposedly, your incomes are rising. But we all know that over the last handful of years, the only jobs really created have been part-time. We've shown the statistics and the graphs on that. And our incomes are not keeping up with inflation. And that's the actual lie and deception of it. It was designed to do that, but it's not doing it. And the best example of how or position we're in inflation now. Let's just, for instance, start in image 1 here. This is an image showing the actual GDP growth there on the bottom. And the actual GDP growth on the bottom is the blue line. And then you see the lines going straight up. Now, those are total credit market debt and total credit market debt with the Federal Reserve. Now, that's very interesting if you see that our growth in income isn't even close to that of our credit and debt in the market. See how big of a difference that is? That's extraordinary. Now that you can take that off, but that image basically sets the stage of what we're talking about. We have printed trillions and extended trillions in loans that doesn't have any direct asset backing it up. The only thing that backs it up is the good faith and credit of a country. And I have to tell you, over time, good faith and credit just doesn't cut it because there's always somebody trying to take your knees out, and the East is trying to do just that. So,
if you owed me $17 trillion, I'd say you're too far in debt to get another credit card.
It's only because we have a great military is the reason we're getting away with it, I tell you.
You know as well as I do, though, if you got too much credit out
Yes,
as
that's
an
it.
individual,
Yes.
you're going to, I don't care how good you pay. If you've got too much credit for your income,
That's right.
when you go to the people that approve your credit, they're going to say, this guy's loaded up too far. He's too heavily, he's lopsided.
That's right.
You can't approve him. Maybe he's got a 750 credit
I
score.
think we all deserve $1 trillion credit card, right?
Well, exactly.
Come on.
How are you going to pay it back?
Right,
See,
and
that's
they're not.
the question.
And this is the dilemma we're in. That image you just saw is a proof that our income is not keeping up with our credit, and you see the credit over those years just kept rising. We're at a pinnacle point where we are literally straight up and down on our credit and money printing, and our income is literally flatlined and negative to that. We're in trouble. Granted, we've made more tax revenue than we ever had in the history of the United States, but our spending is higher and our interest payments are higher. So here's the second part of this equation now. So before we get into that part, let me just tell you the reason this is important. When you see that money printing going up, that credit extended going up, we are in more credit debt now than we were in 2008. Dangerous, dangerous, dangerous. So for those that have IRAs to protect 401ks, currency that is in jeopardy of this type of devaluation and debasement that's going to take place, you need to be properly diversified. So register on his website that you see here. Give us a call. We'll send this package out to those that have assets to protect, and it's loaded with data on the challenges to the dollar in the very near future, global economics, and how simply and easy it is to roll over from your current IRA to a precious metals IRA, because storage of a hard asset over time will hedge you in these times when the dollar gets hit.
Now, Terry, let me mention real quick that you guys, your company, Cornerstone Asset Metals, you don't recommend people putting every penny they have in silver or gold.
It's a very personal decision because silver is money. So, you know, a lot of people, what they're doing is they just look at it as merely, instead of storing currency in a bank, they're storing silver in a vault. It's money to them. Anytime they need currency, they just sell the silver and take the currency. So it's a very personal thing. Some people, 10, 20, 50%. Some people, everything they own is in these type of assets because they don't trust the system. It's very personal. It depends on how much you believe the world and the system. And all you know is it's money. It's exchangeable for currency at any time. And especially at these low prices, it's really a good deal. Now, the second component of inflation, there's not only the printing of money, as you just saw, an extension of credit that our nation in the West have been living off of. It's also energy. Energy runs the universe because we all need it. That's the one thing, food and energy, everybody needs. So let's go to image number 2. And this is a unique dynamic now. This is crude oil. These are OPEC nation budgets. And the reason I'm throwing this in here, you notice oil prices have been coming down. Right now, if you notice Iran, they need $140 a barrel for oil just to break even.
Now, tell the people what you mean by breaking even.
Meaning to pay their budget, to pay like their retirements, their social securities, their police, their fire, their military.
So it costs their country $140
a barrel of oil
just to break even.
They're
not making any money.
Yes. Now look at the other countries all the way down. Even Saudi Arabia, it takes them $90 a barrel. Libya, $90 a barrel. The only 3 nations there at the bottom, Kuwait, UAE, and Qatar, can survive on far less crude oil. Why this image is so important. Now you can see all that red and you can take this off. America has been producing crude oil now. It's called tight oil. It's a shale oil is another word for it. They've learned how to drill horizontally and vertically in very unique ways to get oil in America. We're producing more crude oil right now than Saudi Arabia is. There's this chatter going on that Saudi Arabia is allowing prices to collapse to try to challenge our ability to produce this oil because of the cheaper price. Then we wouldn't want to do it because it's not as profitable. But what also is going on economically, if you go back to the petrodollar, this lowering of oil is merely a trick. It's a strategy. And all those countries that need higher oil prices to survive, most of them are not our friends. We're putting the pressure on them financially by crashing the oil price. The 3 people who are on our side, Kuwait, UAE, and Qatar, if you remember last week, Qatar needs that pipeline through Syria. That's why we're in Syria militarily. And here's the dynamic. So oil coming down has put a lot of pressure on these countries to survive, which I contend is very dangerous because there could get radicalized behavior coming from that when you start cutting somebody's lunch money, if you know what I mean. So that's the other component that inflation is geared on, because energy literally breaks and reignites economies because of the costs. And the inflation of printed currency causes these energy prices to go up and down.
Some people may not believe that America's producing as much oil as they are. My wife and I flew last year to New Mexico to do a conference there. And when we were coming in, we went to a town there on the eastern side of New Mexico. When we were coming in, we were still pretty high in the jet. And I started seeing squares that looked like home sites. And I thought, that's really unusual, because I'm a builder, you know.
Right.
And I thought, that's really unusual to see home sites just cut like that. And it was for miles. I mean, hundreds of miles. Well, the closer we got to the ground, I saw that it was oil wells.
Oil.
And they were beside each other. They had a little road to come into them. It was in the desert.
Yeah.
And it was all the way over into western Texas. I don't know how far, but
Oklahoma, they're finding it in Michigan, New York, everywhere. This shale oil is so big, it literally can bring crude oil prices to its knees. But you can see it's going to cause tremendous trouble. Now remember, don't get fooled that America has all this oil, we're going to be a new economic powerhouse, because it's not. Yes, we will save hundreds of billions of imported oil, but we are so in debt right now, a nation debt. It's the petrodollar power and control that is the issue. And if we start shaking the chains like this, the petrodollar collapses, all that currency that's overseas to buy oil starts coming home, your retirement, your 401k, your standard of living is in big trouble, because that could cause not only inflation, but if not managed correctly, a hyperinflation. And I'll leave you this with the third and final image here for this show is the Shanghai silver stock. This is in the last year alone. That Shanghai is overseas, obviously, right? From 1,000 tons down to 81. Can you believe that dramatic drop right there? You can take this off and I'm going to tell you exactly what that means. It's disappearing. Literally in 1 year, that entire exchange in Shanghai is almost bankrupt of physical silver. It's disappearing. So I'm saying for those that have IRAs to protect 401ks, get information, get registered, get physical hard assets in your retirement account for long-term protection. The world is paying attention to it, so should you. Next week we'll continue this on inflation, and if you haven't made Jesus center of your life, ask him and he'll come. God bless you.
We'll be back next week, same place, same time, for more of the Wealth Transfer. We'll see you then.